Welcome to Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider for September 13th, 2023. We are going to kick off the meeting here with a reminder that we're governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. So in short, please be excellent to one another, be kind, have fun, talk about cloud providers. It's great. It's probably fine. Okay. Jumping into the agenda, the first thing I wanted to look at while people fill out their sub-project updates is we actually have a couple of issues to triage. So that have SIG Cloud Provider listed on them and needs triage. So let's take a look at this one first and see. Whoa, okay, sorry, I just moved to the wrong. I just don't know what happened. I'm sorry. That was super weird. I tried to drag the Zoom controls that were obscuring my view of GitHub out of the way, and it took me to another desktop. I don't know if that made a difference to what was displaying or not. Sorry about that. Okay, so service node port cannot be released promptly. Let's see if this has had some work on it. It looks like Antonio says this is a SIG network problem. Do we believe that there is anything cloud provider-ish in here? Has anyone had a chance to take a look at this? It looks like this individual thought it was the cloud provider. So what do we think? Cloud Controller Manager is adding a finalizer. Or at least that's how we test it. All right, does anyone see anything in here that they want to follow up on or investigate?
I feel like this port releasing thing had come up once before, but I don't remember what the issue was.
In a CCM context?
I thought so, yeah, but it's been several months since I saw the bug, so I'd have to go look for it again.
Okay. I mean, it does sound semi-familiar, but again, it's kind of unsure. Basically, it looks like SIG Network is definitely, Antonio's going to be taking a look at this. Is this something where we want to, because he's at the problem, he has not removed the needs triage. So I'm kind of reluctant to have us remove needs triage, since then it won't show up in SIG Network's triaging next time they run through. But do you, Amika, or does somebody else want to take a look at this to see if there's anything CCM related that we have to worry about in it?
I mean, I probably don't have the setup to actually test it the same way, but I could try to go look for the other issue to see if maybe there's some relation or something.
Okay. All right, I'll just tag with that. So that gives us something to go on right there, just in case. And then there was one other one. Looks like we have a failing test. And this one is, it looks like GCE, though of course it could apply to other things as well. Okay. Yes, it's of course provider specific tests. Okay, what do we think? It looks like some test runs have been green. Do any of our Google friends want to take a look at this? Or triage accept it? If we have anybody?
Yeah, I can take a look. Yep.
Okay.
This is a GCE failing test?
It says that there were failing tests, and then this person saw some of them had come green, but they don't have any context on whether or not something is still broken. It's like kubetest.up was giving failures for some reason. So I will say, oh, yes?
Yeah, it can assign to me. I'll take a look.
Okay. I will. Is it? Can you remind me, like, where your
Yeah,
GitHub handle is?
SIG.
It's this one, right? Okay. Yes. Fantastic.
Guess I'm not in the
Okay.
GitHub cache anymore.
Who knows? All right. So those are the only two that are the current ones. Hopefully anyone else who wanted, I don't have anything in sub-project update today specifically myself. It looks like IBM Cloud, we do have one. Do you want to tell us what's going on with your sub-project?
Yep. The open source repo we have is being factored right now just to, we have two different environments we have in IBM Cloud. We have a classic environment and a VPC environment. And right now, both of them are open sourced, and eventually we want to deprecate the classic environment. So we want to only open source the VPC. So we're working on refactoring so we can set that up so we only open sourcing one environment, not the other. So it's just a refactoring the code.
So are both of them open source right now, you were saying?
Right now, both of them are, yes.
Okay. Yeah,
The
and you
way-
want to have something consistent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, more power to you on that. I wish you the best there. That is always super fun. And then does anybody else have any other sub-project updates that you want to go into before we jump into our agenda? Okay, Andrew, it looks like you have our first topic. Want to take it away?
Yeah, so we discussed it in the extraction sub-project meeting, and it was discussed a bit on Slack as well. But DIMS kind of flipped us, or actually, did we discuss it in the last meeting? Because I missed the last meeting.
Let's scroll down and look. I'm not 100% positive if we talked about that specifically or not.
Right, because the changes have landed.
I don't think so.
in
Yeah,
between
I
the
saw a
two
bunch of traffic on it on Slack. It would be great, by the way, if somebody who has the links handy wants to drop at least one link in for maybe the promotion to beta, just so that for the record for this document, we have the link. But anyway, you were saying follow-up tasks.
Yeah, so I think we should, so assuming that we're going to keep those changes for 129, we probably want to put a lot of thought and effort into documentation, blog posts, things like that, making sure that it's a pretty big highlight of the release and ensuring folks know what things are going to break. Yeah.
So I have a question about that, which is, I know that beta stuff is not on by default anymore, but do you believe that this should be promoted to beta and also flipped on by default? Or like, does it have to be, or what's your thinking on that?
So my understanding is beta APIs are not on by default in the runtime config, but beta feature gates are still on by default. And so with the promotion of this feature gate to beta, we are turning it off by default. And because there's no runtime API associated with it, it'll just be on by default, which means it's off by default.
Yeah, let's make sure we make that really clear and write a blog post, a release blog.
I agree.
Okay.
And I don't know, we probably want to just sync up with the release team as well, and just make sure they understand the magnitude of the change. I think Michael, you have the action item to like update the cap.
Yes, I've got the PR up there I just linked the PR that's updating the metadata, but I'd like to follow up on that with there's a PR that DIMS, or there's an issue that DIMS had started where he was collecting notes about like the migration stuff, because I think that's the other part of the cap we need to update is we need to put some general guidance about what components do you need to update or to migrate, and how do you migrate them. And then it sounded like we can defer some of the platform specific details to those specific platforms, but at the very least we need to talk about like, what do you need to do to kubelet, what do you need to do to API server, what do you need to do to kube controller manager, and then talk about you also have to deploy a CCM, but that's kind of in their hands at that point. So I'd like to get back in and update that part of the KEP as well. But so far I've just put up a PR that kind of took Dim's work and just, carried it forward with updating the versions and putting us into beta phase then.
Sounds good. I think specifically we want like all the PR concerns addressed.
Yes, I was going to say, like, didn't this get rejected in the past because we hadn't hit the PRR concerns and we hadn't hit the docs updates, I want to say?
It was the docs updates that were the big part. So like, I think that Dim's and the second link that I put there that has kind of like the issue and the cap. I've been trying to put all the links in that issue because that's like where the discussion is kind of happening. So that's why I say I'd like to take Dim's work, gathering some of these notes and then transform them into the cap. So that's probably the next thing I need to do basically.
Okay, I'm putting a note, as you can see, that we need to look at the deadlines for 1.29 and make sure, I know the release cycle just started, but I think we got to look at the deadlines very carefully and make sure we're going to make the production readiness review and documentation deadlines. Because I don't want to set ourselves up for, oh no, we just realized we have to do it all in the next 3 days or else. Like, let's make sure we know.
That's
why I'm confident we can do it, but let's make sure we know.
Yeah. That's why we wanted to turn the tests on early in the cycle so that we know, we kind of start to get an impression of what's happening. But yeah, like I'll make a note to double check on the dates, just to see what kind of time I have to get this stuff done on the cap updates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Really great progress though, 129 so far. The fact that we have like the CI pipelines green with the feature gate already flipped is really good. But yeah, Bridget, I kind of agree that we probably pulled the trigger a little early doing the feature gate update before the KEP update. But I could take that up with Dims because he was kind of pushing. Yeah.
I'm happy that we went that direction because I remember Dims being the one kind of shutting us down in the past. So like Dims being enthusiastic about moving this forward sounds great. Let's keep with that momentum, but we've got to make sure we check all the boxes so that this doesn't get booted out of the release.
Yeah. I've been trying to follow up on that, and I think the ball's in my court at this point to finish up the work on the cap that I was doing. So I'll look into the dates and just make sure that we're not going to like blow through the dates or something here.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put right there. Okay. It looks like, so we've kind of talked this through to about there. Andrew, there's a little bit more detail here. Do you want to go into detail about that?
Sure. So there's still like one admission controller and API server that is applying some metadata on persistent volumes if it's used by one of the industry cloud providers. And our plan in previous releases was to add a webhook integration in the CCM that can replace that logic. But I think a lot of that work kind of stalled, and the feature to add the webhook hosting in CCM is kind of stuck in alpha and not really ready for beta. So what I'm proposing instead here is just create an external project that is specifically just a simple admission webhook that replaces the persistent volume label admission controller and point users in that direction if they still need that volume, that admission controller.
When you say external project, do you mean like project, like a new thing that gets its own Kubernetes SIGs repo and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out, so I didn't hear what the answer was.
Yes. Yeah. So the project's already created. The repo's empty though. It's a Kubernetes SIGs project, and basically it's just going to be a webhook server that imports the legacy cloud provider packages and just it's basically just a wrapper around the current logic, but just as an external admission controller.
And you said this was in alpha. I want to, and maybe Mike, you can probably weigh in here because I'm just kind of like going, is this an exciting new change that it just sounds very separate? Yeah.
No, I just want to get an update. So like I started like working on the next steps for using it as a proper webhook, because right now whatever Nick has done, the changes are only to start as a admission webhook server, but the actual it doesn't update the AP server with the new configurations to make the webhook in place. So I started work on that. Like I'm hoping to, have some initial PR, like maybe this week or early next week sometime. I hope to have some update before the next SIG meeting, like on this.
Awesome. So just to be clear, there's two separate things we're talking about. Like the first one is the original plan, which Kirtan just mentioned, which is the ability for the Cloud Controller Manager to host a webhook server, which we can use as kind of a generic like plugin mechanism to do admission control for like, random resources like service load balancers and persistent volumes, things like that. But because we are moving forward with this promotion to beta in 129, and that webhook integration is not going to be ready for 129, we are working on a separate effort to have a project that users can use right away that replaces the very specific capability that the webhook hosting on CCM was supposed to fix, which is persistent volume labeling. So like the current plan is to just do them in parallel. Like we're gonna have the external project that replaces just the persistent volume labeler as an external webhook. And then we're also gonna continue working on the generic webhook thing that we can eventually use for other things as well.
Okay, Mike, please weigh in.
I just have a question. I'm wondering, like, do you think we need to have a discussion of this, of the new controller, the new admission controller you're creating in the CAP? Like, should we also add that information to the CAP? Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm nodding like, yes. And I also feel like I want to make sure I understand and have the timelines correct, because with my naive understanding of this, it kind of sounds like what we would be saying to the world is, hey, our CEP is looking great. We're promoting this, change to beta. And also we made a completely major load bearing change that's alpha. Just ignore the man behind the curtain. Like, I'm just kind of like, is this going to affect our ability to move to beta? I don't know. Like, what do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, so the alpha webhook thing is not blocking for the so the reason why we're building the external project is because the webhook alpha thing is not ready. So what we're doing is let me pull up the link.
And is disabling Cloud Provider okay even without the webhook ready? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe the answer is sure, it's fine, but I'm just a little worried.
So the only thing that's missing today is a replacement for the API server admission controller that labels persistent volumes, right?
And you think it's okay to go to beta with that missing?
So as long as we have a suitable replacement for that admission controller, it doesn't have to use the new alpha feature in CCM. We can provide a simple external, like just admission webhook that basically imports the same packages as what's in tree and does the exact same logic as the API server, but it just does it as an external webhook and not as an in-tree admission controller. And that would be the last thing that we need to replace that's in tree. And from there, we should effectively have like complete feature parity with in-tree. We're just not using the built-in webhook capabilities in the CCM to do that because that feature is not ready. I think it'll make more sense once I have like a working prototype of the external admission controller.
I mean, the functionality all sounds great. The thing I'm slightly concerned about is the part where we're saying something can go to beta, even though one of the features that is theoretically essential for it is actually going to be an external alpha thing. That's the thing I'm going, what's production readiness review going to say about that? Because I'm a little worried they're going to turn around and look at that and go, until the essential underpinning components can be marked beta, do you really think this can be beta? That's what I think we might hear, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So I guess this is a matter of like what do you mark as alpha beta, because the webhook capability in the CCM is alpha for sure. But if we create an external project which is just a webhook server that is importing the exact same code as what's already an API server, and it's not new code, it's just like porting the same code but as an external binary. Like if we're saying like that's alpha, then okay, maybe we need to wait longer. If we're saying it's we can mark it as stable because it's just the same code in a different binary, then maybe not. So I think we can debate more about like what we want, how we want to label this new external project.
Yeah, I think that is going to definitely be key. Omika, what do you think?
I think like another thing it's probably important to mention while we're talking about this new project is kind of the scope of impact, because my understanding, and I'll try to mention this in the cut, but my understanding is that the scope of impact is relatively limited for this, because like most new users to Kubernetes are going to be using CSI drivers if they're using storage, and the CSI drivers will most likely handle the persistent volume labeling. So like this admission plugin that labels the persistent volumes is only really needed in some very specific cases on specific cloud providers. So I think it's also important to note that when we talk about this, like really this is to help people who are bringing older clusters forward, who are not necessarily engaged with some of the newer storage patterns. So like that's my understanding of it, and I'd like to maybe get the details there so that when we talk about this, and I get what you're saying, Bridget, like even though we're taking the code from another project and it's still a whole new project we're setting up, a new way of configuring and everything, but we need to let people know that really a minority of users are going to be using this because it is kind of like an edge case for modern Kubernetes deployments. And that's just kind of my opinion on it, I guess.
Yes, that is like very important context as well, that most users should be on CSI, and CSI has its own mechanism of like applying topology labels on persistent volumes and everything. And this is really just like making sure we're not breaking compatibility for like very certain edge cases. But I agree, like we should very clearly articulate and like list out what those clusters are, like how old, like if you upgraded a cluster from like 120 or like 1.8 or 1.10 or however old, the very specifics of the versions, I think that'll be important.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about those.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Bridget.
Oh, I'm saying I've been through production readiness reviews gauntlet a few times, so I'm just making sure that we have our ducks in a row in terms of what we assert is going to be fine and where we believe risks exist and what we can document about them. Because I think that's going to be really germane to whether or not this gets the green light from the PRR committee.
Yeah, totally agree. And like one of my big concerns here is not necessarily documenting the migration parts of this, but documenting some of these details, because this is going to be like very pedantic, set of details that we need to expose. So like Andrew, I might reach out to you, on Slack if I run into some trouble kind of trying to figure out what I need to be looking at here to get these details.
Yep, sounds good. And we might have to loop in Michelle for the specifics on the storage bits.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
This is very exciting. And I think given that we have some real meaty documentation and PRR work to do here, let's make sure that before our next meeting, we've at least done some sort of sync on that.
Yeah, I'm on PTO the rest of this week, but next week I'll put some time in early so that by the time we get to the extraction meeting by Thursday, we'll have something to talk about.
Okay, great. All right, is there anything else about this that we should take a look at? Do you want to step through any of this, or what do you think, Andrew?
No, I think yeah, just making sure like this is I agree, like making sure it's all enumerated in the cap. So I think yeah, let's just yeah, when the cap's ready, let's just review the cap together and make sure it's all in there.
Okay, let's just write down review at our next meeting.
And when's
Wonderful.
the enhancement deadline for 129?
I have to go look. I mean, they always seem to be much sooner in docs deadlines and PRR deadlines. I think that the release, I think we're only a week or two in, but I think it's like 4 weeks or something. I mean, it's soon. Like we probably don't have 2 more of these meetings after this before we have to have at least some of that data ready. We can check the deadlines. I don't want to try to do that like while everyone's waiting.
Yeah, no, I'll check into the deadline, and like I said, I'll start to get into this deeper like next week. So at the very least, I'll start to make progress next week, and we'll figure out the deadline at that point.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Anything else on this topic before I jump us to the next one? Okay, so I noticed that an individual came on our SIG Cloud Provider channel on Slack and brought this up. And I thought, hey, this is interesting because this is one where, and again, Antonio was looking at it and thinks there's some failure and maybe there's like provider ID missing, API call stuff going on. And he tagged Andrew. So this is just a few hours ago, so I'm sure you haven't had a chance to look at this yet, Andrew, but are you thinking this looks, I mean, it's right now it says needs triage, and I'm looking at this thinking, I think maybe we do want to take a look at this. Like, what do we think?
Yeah, we should probably, yeah, I think we should review it.
Okay.
Or I think, yeah, it's a valid ask.
Okay, so this is a triage accept. Do you want to look at it, or do you, I think Antonio assigned you, but like, do you want to try to bring anyone else in, or what are you thinking?
Well, if other folks want to review that, I think more than welcome to have more eyes on it, but I'm happy to take a look as well. And anyone want to sign up to do a first pass?
All right, Elmika.
I mean, I'm not necessarily signing up. I'm also not like shirking away from it. I just wanted to comment that I think this is a good issue for new reviewers to get into as well, because it's not specific to one cloud provider and it involves much more generic behavior. So I think this is a great place if we have people who want to get more involved in the SIG. This is like a great review to get on.
Okay, and I saw a couple of hands go up. So, Kirthan.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a look. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I mean, yeah, I've been through some code before, so I can.
Okay. I am, and then I think Caleb, is there? You were also raising your hand?
Yeah, I'm new here, so I think to be a good opportunity to get started.
Yeah, do you want to, why don't I'll do a triage accept and assign both of you to take a look. Kirthan, what's your GitHub?
KMALA. Yeah, that's the one before. Yeah, the first one.
Great. And then Caleb, what's yours?
I sent it in the chat.
Oh, wonderful. Of course, I have to try to pop the chat open warm screen sharing, which is amazing and great. But I was able to. Yay. Okay, great. And then I'm going to do a triage accepted on this. And that way we have a few sets of eyes taking a look and seeing what we can find out and reporting back. Wonderful. Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to draw attention to that one because it came up on the chat and I thought, oh, okay. Let's see, what else, if anything, do we want to talk about today? Caleb, since you're new here, you want to tell us about yourself? Say hi.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Caleb and I'm based in Nigeria. I've been using Kubernetes for a while, but I've always been interested in contributing. So this is me taking some practical steps to that effect.
Wonderful. Welcome. And
Thank you.
of course, Cloud Provider is, SIG Cloud Provider is very Cloud Provider specific. Do you have specific cloud providers that you're usually working with?
Hey, I'm familiar with AWS and Azure. I've also done some work with GCP.
Wonderful. Well, there's this whole cloud provider extraction migration project means that there's a lot of moving of stuff out of tree, that there is a Thursday extraction migration meeting that if you joined, you probably have on your calendar as well. So
Yes, I do. Thank you.
I just have wondered on the extraction meeting, like I think the doc is out of date. So it is the one which I got from the committee's repo. It mentions the meeting as 1:30 PST.
so does somebody have, I don't usually go to that meeting. So does somebody have the doc for that meeting handy? Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, I can follow up on Kirthan's issue here and make sure it gets updated. Are you saying is the agenda wrong, or is the docs in GitHub wrong, I guess?
So the doc link which from the GitHub, when I moved to it, like it shows the meeting as 1:30 PST.
Okay. I'll put a PR there.
You mean calendar invite? Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe the calendar, because still my Google shows like it's 1:30. So maybe both. At least I think fixing the Google Doc to mention the meeting is at 1:30, like 9:30 PST instead of 1:30. I think that helps.
Okay, so Mike, you'll take that as a
Yeah, I'll take an
that
action
meeting.
item just to review all the locations where we broadcast our meetings and make sure they're updated. Because I was gonna mention to Caleb as well. We also have a sub project meeting on Wednesdays that alternates with this meeting on alternating Wednesdays for the API server network proxy, which is also called connectivity. And that's another project that we're moving towards general availability on it. And it's another area to get involved if you're curious or looking for new projects to kind of get into and whatnot.
Awesome. I would definitely love to check it out.
Cool.
Okay, great.
Welcome aboard. Yeah.
All right, does anyone have anything else we should discuss? Okay, wonderful. Have a wonderful day and week, and hope everybody stays safe and has fun. Take care.
Thanks, you too, Bridget.